Hello, hello.
So what do we want to talk about today?
Okay. I put a bug in your ear about shame and I want to talk about shame. Because
Good on you.
who likes talking about shame? Unless you're Brene Brown. Oh my gosh.
Right?
So, shame. I want to make this a bit of a series with you because I have a lot to say about it. And this is stuff that I find really, with clients, I get a lot of traction with this. And this can be some really powerful work, in particular because nobody talks about shame. It's a really hard place to go.
I
So,
think, or they talk about it, but we
ah,
we talk about conscious shame
yes.
and not that
Yes.
subconscious shame. And I think people get really confused by how like we try to keep it up here. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
shame, but it's like saying Jesus. Like people say, yeah, oh yeah, Jesus. But then there's this
Right.
embodiment, like a spiritual embodiment
Exactly.
of your faith.
Then this is what I want to do across the series is I want to take language that's sort of accessible, sort of popular, and get a little bit more technical with it, break it down, and actually make it something we can play with, something that instead of being out there is here, and we can move what is here. We can hold what is here.
Yeah,
We can look at what is here. Out here in philosophical is a fun place to play, but it doesn't change you
right.
until it gets to here.
I think, and when I've spoken to you about shame, if I was going to guess or paraphrase what I think your thesis statement is with shame, is let's all have like an internal shift, an internal experience, and resounding with our shame. Like, what if we resounded with our shame?
Hmm. So that is part of where I want to go. We'll build out and we'll get there.
Okay, perfect.
Because there's some deconstructing we need to do when it comes to talking about shame. Um,
I'm game.
I was in a meeting once where I was making a pitch to do a presentation, and one of the things I wanted to talk to people about was shame. And I mentioned this idea of healthy shame. And the person across from me, um, they kind of blew up. I want to say this with as much dignity as possible, but they had a very particular idea that there was no such thing as healthy shame. And I want to respect the fact that they probably had a particular category for thinking of and talking about shame, and that in no way could that category be healthy. So I want to build a broader, different, bigger, more flexible and movable category when I talk about shame.
Yeah, that's good because that's hard. I think that's a really hard challenge for people when we're keeping it in our conscious, sort of in our
Yeah.
conscious state of like, here's a problem. I've got habits around this problem, and how am I going to fix it?
Yep.
But what is the intrinsic change, the intrinsic, the embodied view?
Yeah. So let's start there. Let's start right from the ground up. When I talk about emotions, people sometimes have an idea of positive and negative emotions. I don't like that language. I don't use that language. Emotions are something our nervous system gives us as our first layer of interpretation of reality. It's part of us. Our joy is part of us. Our anger is part of us. Our shame, our fear, our disgust, they're all part of us. And if we try to push those parts down or cut them off, we push down a part of ourselves. We cut down a part of ourselves. And we need these pieces. They're part of our interpretation of reality. If we don't have access to these pieces of ourselves, we lose part of our ability to relate to reality. So when I talk about shame, it's about how can you be with your shame in a way that helps you better deal with reality. Shame exists functionally and does something for us.
I love that. That's brilliant. And I mean, again, from an emotionally focused point of view, we honor that underneath the surface, this is the language, underneath the surface, there's
Mhm.
unmet attachment needs and fear.
Yeah.
And then there is a relationship, there's a correlation between our fears about who we are in relationships and our
Mhm.
inability to ever be met and
Yep.
shame.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what's interesting when you're talking about this too is like
Uh,
we're afraid of pain, and shame and pain are associated. So this is where the
oh,
discomfort was saying good shame, and
yep.
stop there, brother. Don't even add on.
Right.
But if we have no pain, that's a very serious biological, physiological disorder
Yeah.
where we're constantly in danger. I don't know if I'm touching the stove and burning my hand until my hand is so burnt
Yeah.
that, and that is risk. But we like to numb hurt. We don't want to feel hurt.
Yeah.
We're feel good, smiling kind of society.
Totally. Totally. So let's build out a bit of a category for shame. There's two types of shame I want to talk about real quick. They come from research that's being done in Europe right now. It's in Danish. I have an instructor who's Danish, and she tells us about the stuff in English, but I haven't seen it in print, so I'm going off her word.
Hopefully it's good. Hopefully she's telling you the truth.
As true as it is or not, it has been incredibly useful for my clients. So there's a truth and a usefulness there. So what I'm going to talk about here is the difference between red shame and white shame. And this is descriptive biologically of our experience of these two types of shame. So red shame, we can talk about as embarrassment, as shyness, as coyness. It's when our face turns red. Our cheeks go red, our ears go red, the back of our neck feels like it's burning, our chest feels like it's getting red. This is our body flushing with blood flow right at the surface of our skin. And it feels really overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on physiologically. And at this place, it's really hard to make eye contact with people. Now, the key thing here is that because our blood's flowing into our face, into our brain, we still have access to a lot of our consciousness. This is a conscious shame. And this is a shame that allows us to reflect on ourselves in relationship. Shame and relationship go together. Emotions are meant for relationship. So this shame can come up when we evaluate that we've done something that's not good for relationship. It could be as simple, and I say this to clients, it could be as simple as being in West End Mall, picking your nose, and realizing somebody saw you. You're like, oh, faux pas, not supposed to do that.
And that means you had your mask off too.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right. Right? It can be, this kind of shame can come up. We can stub our toe. Nobody's around. And our first thought is, ow, who saw that? Right? This is red shame. Mm-hmm. So even if nobody's around, it still feels like it's in connection to people. Right? Because it's like, who saw me be an idiot just now?
I mean, I think it's too, I like to eat chocolate by myself.
Right?
So, I don't want to share, but also like there is this thing like, and I think that that's a normal example of like, oh, yeah. Like, my little secret. What are my secrets? That's an interesting question in relation to our shame.
Well, so this is exactly it. I mean, let's build this up. This is, to be technical, the function of shame is to keep us in relationship. And the things we want to hide are things we don't think we can bring into relationship. That if we brought them into a relationship, the relationship would be cut off. If we brought that forward, somebody would come out with disgust and we'd lose them.
Brilliant.
So shame is saying, okay, act like this, don't act like that. This is how we keep stable civilization, right? And this is really useful. I think our culture can get really down on shame without really understanding the function and the role of it. Because if somebody does something that's harmful to you, if they don't feel shame for what they have done, they're not going to recognize how they hurt you. They can't take accountability for it. Just the impulse for the accountability is part of that shame, right? And
well, I would say that's some of the good shame stuff is what I think.
Exactly. So this, when we have a place for shame and we can hold it and we can act on it and we can stay conscious with it, this good red shame, you can say, I did that. That wasn't cool. It hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I hurt you, right? And hopefully my actions reflect that too, right? So shame is saying, whoops, something was not good in relationship. We screw up, we're human, we make mistakes, sometimes even intentionally. But when we can feel shame, when we can be with our shame, we have the impulse physiologically even to do something, to take accountability.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of stress and eustress. Like if we have a you shame, EUSHAM.
Yeah.
Because it's not just accountability. It's not just compassion. It's not just empathy.
Yeah.
It's that initial like, ooh, I did this thing. I feel afraid that my worst fears about all my defectiveness or my never met needs will never be met.
Mhm,
But then I know this. I
mhm.
have something integrated. There's a space for that shame. And I say, hello, shame.
Yep,
And then I can move into relationship.
exactly. So
Beautiful.
this is where we can talk about the bridge between red shame and white shame,
Mm.
right? So red shame is saying I can deal with 20% shame. I'm embarrassed. I'm shy. I can deal with 40, 50, 60% shame. I'm embarrassed. 70, 80% shame. I can't make eye contact with you, but I'm still here with you. I'm kind of ducking my head. But when we start talking 90, 100, 110% shame, this becomes physiologically too much for us to hold. 100% is our physical limit before we start losing it. And this is where red shame becomes white shame, right? Physiologically, we go through a shift. The blood drains out of our face, right? And this is a shame that we cannot handle personally. It's too big. And one of the key differences that can happen here is we can take responsibility for things we have done. We can be embarrassed about that. Shame related to our actions, what we typically call guilt, we can work with, right? It's transactional. We can try to make reparations, or we can work through it. This kind of thing. That's relational. When shame is about who we are, there's no way you can make actions about that, right? And you can spend your life living down who you think you are from a place of white shame, but it's not something you can ever really fully work through in that way. And when your blood is draining out of your face, what's going on is that you're also starting to lose blood flow, not entirely, but to a degree in critical brain structures that actually give you a sense of self and a sense of connection and a sense of emotion and relationship, right?
And is that why they call it white shame?
Yes, because you lose blood flow.
I love
You're,
eusomatic. Eusomatic people, there's a reason why you choose the colors that you do.
right? I mean, there's a different kind of white shame too. So when we talk about white shame and about who we are, people can get shamed for things like their race, their ethnicity, the culture they came from, personal preferences. Like this is what I'll say with clients. When's the last time you chose consciously whether you like vanilla or chocolate? You eat one, you eat the other, and you say, I like that one better. It's not really a conscious choice. But then somebody comes along and says, really? Vanilla gang? Oh my gosh, you are just so inferior. Chocolate is clearly the better. And because you don't recognize chocolate ice cream as the better ice cream, I don't want to spend time with you. Ugh, who are you? They're shaming you for something that you don't actually really have control over. Or, I mean, at one point, it really wasn't very popular to be German in Canada or Irish, right? Or multiple different ethnicities at any given time. There's times where who you are gets painted with a brush.
Yeah.
And you don't have say over who paints you with that brush, but you still deal with shame.
See, and it's interesting when you're talking about this because so the most sort of general attachment fear is probably rejection. And the most general unmet attachment need or attachment need is abandonment.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, and some of what we talked about with Kayla Shackleton in our group blog
Yeah.
is this like the big little problem and the big little emotion associated with it.
Yeah.
But if I can feel like a tolerable rejection,
Yeah.
or then there's the ultimate rejection that whatever my real sort of perception or my real attachment fear that informs my fear of rejection is hit.
Yeah.
And so it's like the gravity of my shame, which fits with your scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's interesting is there is a subconscious natural process with this sort of like white shame. And there's just like the red, the pink, the white. And so that's just happening anyhow. Like I have tolerable shame and then I have intolerable shame. I have some shame that I can do something good with some of the time. But the more I'm aware of good and bad shame, the more I can move into action and health and love and acceptance for myself, more secure attachment with
Yes.
my shame, a secure
Yeah.
attachment with my shame, actually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, let's play this out a little bit here, because there's one thing
Right.
I'm going to mention that I functionally I really want to make clear, like where the rubber hits the road here. Shame for most people is scarier than death, because shame is death. When we are born, it's baked into our nervous system that we rely entirely on somebody else for our existence. And we grow up with that being the foundation that we build on top of it. So
Yeah.
losing connection is equivalent to dying. And I would rather die than lose connection and die.
I love this, Tony, because what I've been learning from you this past month in particular is, yeah, I agree with you that shame is so interconnected with our relationships. And when you're saying this, that is pure attachment.
Yeah.
Baby's born into the world relying on a central nervous system. They
Yeah.
survive childbirth by co-regulating with mom and
Yeah.
dad. And then they learn. They're like, I know your nervous system, daddy. I know your nervous system, mommy.
Mhm.
And I know when your nervous system doesn't feel good around me. And then what you're sort of challenging is like shame starts to knit into baby.
Yep.
And baby's like, oh no, you feel that way. How do I shift?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
do I do so that mommy doesn't feel like that, so that she'll be with me? I coo.
Yeah.
Crying is not good for mommy, so I learn to not cry when I need to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, like you can see, you kick the ball down the road, you add 30 years on that baby.
Right.
And this is how we socialize. 5, 10%, 15% shame. That's fine. We can handle that. We learn how to play by the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Or enough of the rules that we have enough of good relationships. Right? And we have different tolerance for that. Two things I really want to say here is that when we get a sense, the gradation between red shame and white shame, we can have space to hold a bit of shame. 10%, 15, right? These dialing numbers. So that's key to say that not all shame, the moment shame comes up, it's not overwhelming because we actually can get a sense of how much we have. It's not on off, but it's like, okay, I see 10% here. I see 70% here, and it's bothering me, but that's what shame is. It's supposed to bother you. So it's normal that it bothers you. And if you're aware of it, and this is key, if you're aware of it, that's what matters. When we move into white shame, how it looks behaviorally is shameless. Because we are at a point where we do not have access to our shame anymore. It's permeating our experience. And because we don't know what more and less feels like, all is shame and nothing is shame. Right? So if you have somebody who has been shamed and they've given up finding a way to live outside of shame, then they do all kinds of shameless things because they don't have access to feeling apart from shame and they can't recognize the shame when it comes up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of sort of a reptile mind, like the fight, flight, freeze, fawn stuff, where it's like, this is flooded now. So I'm just like,
yeah,
like a deer that poops and runs.
Yes, this is it. Because this is white shame. It's not a place you live consciously. You're in your instincts at this point. And instincts don't feel shame, they feel survival.
And I think, like I was thinking of actually a course that Tony and I took like 10 years ago or whatever. And that was the analogy that they talked about, like a deer in the headlights poops and runs. But like that is so often I'm ashamed that I'm in the white. And then we do poop and run.
Yeah.
We do something like I'm ashamed and then I do something terrible. I lash out or I do something really stupid, like even more humiliating. I'm ashamed, so I humiliate myself. I'm ashamed, so I attack. I'm ashamed, so I poop.
Yeah.
And then I run.
Oh, two things. There's always two things. You say something and I got another two things. Okay, which one do I roll out first? So we'll go with this one. You can go into white shame. You can be there for a little bit of time. We can call it like a shock-like experience. You're in your instincts. You can start using trauma language there. It's when you start leaving your instinct mode of existence, when you start getting blood flow back, that we start getting consciousness of ourself back. Those structures of our brain come back online. And when they start coming back online, if we recall what sent us out, we dip back into consciousness, fly back into white shame. This is the part where therapy is trying to slow things down and help you land your shame back from white into red. This is what I try to do with a lot of clients, to say, hey, how can I help you live in a place where you're conscious of yourself, where you're not just pooping and running as a wave existence, right? Now, this ties in to my second point, because this is really important with shame being a social emotion. And what can get really complicated for clients, for ourselves, is that we can carry somebody else's shame that they never owned.
I think we always carry somebody else's shame that they never owned.
Right. And when it hits critical mass, then we have an issue.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work then ends up being saying, okay, you have your own shame. You're allowed, it's good for you to have your own shame, but are you carrying shame that's not yours?
And then the other truth is, somebody else is always carrying some shame that we never owned. There's tons of people. Raise your hand if Tara Boothby caused you, you're carrying some shame that she put on you. Like it's human. We all are.
Oh, man, have mercy. That's exactly it, right?
Yeah. Ask our children. Number one.
Good thing mine can't talk just yet, but I'm sure I'll hear about that down the road. So this is it. I mean, this is part of the battle of shame, and this is where I think it's so important for us to have the conversation, because I think shame always has been, and very acutely right now, even in our culture, is being acutely weaponized. And people are being painted with broad brushstrokes a million ways over. And there's some really important conversations going on about that, right? Some really good social justice intersectional conversations going on about how people have been painted with something that they had no say over. But I want to take that conversation a step further and say, what do we do with that? How do we get out from under the brushstroke and show up as people?
I think it's like, what do we do and what are we doing? What are we doing? We're numbing, and we're encouraged to numb, and that's what people are confused. We're tribalizing, and we're more aware of it because of social media, because of addiction, because of these things that are more blatant, like social media in particular, and technology. And so people talk about technology as numbing, and it's moving us from relationship. So we know that it's like, I feel pain. I don't want to feel pain. I try to figure it out on my own, rather than just living in this body that is created, that has an instinctual ability to have some relationship with shame. So if I can make friends with red shame, the more I can make friends with red shame, the more I can have organized relationship with red shame.
Exactly.
The more I can expand into what seems so intolerable.
That's exactly it, right? And we don't have a lot of good role models here. And this is where nervous system role model is important. And this is why we're having this conversation. This is specifically why I wanted to have this conversation, is the more we can be with our shame together, the more we can fight the lies that our nervous system gives us, that says, if you bring this into a relationship, they're going to disappear. Now, disclaimer, not everybody's ready to receive your shame.
No.
Okay? Don't bring your shame into every relationship. But what you want to look for is opportunities. And this is part of what therapy is about. And other really instructive, helpful relationships is saying, hey, can I bring my shame to you?
Yeah.
And viscerally experience the fact that you say, wow, yeah, I'm there with you. I can see your shame. Guess what? I'm not going anywhere.
And then the flip side. So I love what you're saying. I have like 3 points. But one.
Got to one up me, Tara?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, you got to learn something from me, Tony, or else what am I doing with you? But one, the being out of relationship with people, it's so hard. It's like really confusing to me. But if there's somebody that just like bombards and blasts you with shame, it's okay to take a breather and be out of relationship Doesn't necessarily mean you always will be, but
Mhm.
maybe. If I don't like myself with you, it's pretty hard to do my work.
Mhm.
So, and with people where we don't have that as much intimacy with, I'm sorry is fine.
Yeah.
Circle of security. What is
Yeah.
repair?
Yeah.
Repair says, I am here.
Yeah.
I know you need me, and we are going to work this out.
Yeah. And heck,
And
this is hard, but I'm here.
I'm here. And like, imagine saying that to ourselves.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. And it's hard to say to ourselves if nobody's ever said it to us. It's not impossible, but it's particularly hard.
It is. Like, if I've never experienced emotional warmth, how do I trust to give emotional warmth to myself?
Yeah.
How am I able? It's all this truth. It's not about blaming. We love and honor people, but I'm a person just like everybody else. Tony's a person just like everybody else.
Yeah.
I want to share like a little example, if that's okay, because I
Go
know we're
for it.
getting close to the end of our time, and obviously this is going to be like series during 2022 because there's so much.
Oh, barely scratched the surface already.
Yeah, so my little guy, I can see it when he's in shame. I can see it on his little face. And so he'll be upset about something. He needs something. He's only 4. He can't quite articulate it. He's a great kid. I'm his mother, of course, I think so. So then I'll sit him on my lap and he might fight me a little bit, not want to be there. And I just try to sit, to just like be regulated in my body. And what works for me is I focus on delight. That's an attachment focus. And then I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just sitting there. He can struggle. Eventually he comes in. And then with him, what works is eye contact. So I'm always like, eventually when he's a bit calmer, look at mommy. So we do some eye contact and have conversation. A couple of nights ago, he was just having a hard time. Soothed him. He didn't want to sleep in his bed, so I put him into my bed. I wasn't going to sleep yet, so he's in there, and he says, "Mom, I have something to tell you." I'm like, "Okay." He says, "When I'm angry, my heart is blue, and when my heart is blue, sometimes it's sad.
Yeah.
But when I say sorry, my heart turns red."
I love it.
I'm like, and in that moment, after feeling the shame of parenting and like having my kid fight me on his lap, and I'm like, what is wrong with his attachment? What am I doing? I'm like, oh, my shame was like touched.
Yeah.
My shame was touched. And I was so impressed out of the mouths of babes with his insight. And now he has this thing he shared with a safe person.
Yeah.
And then we can build this tool together about what feeds his red heart.
Yeah.
But that is him creating a positive experience with his shame.
Oh, absolutely. Right. A story my instructor Dita shared with us was so powerful. This idea of being proud of shame.
Mm.
And long story short, if we can sit with our shame, if we can recognize it, if somebody comes to us with their shame, that's a bid for connection. That's them saying, "Oh my gosh, I did something really wrong."
Yes.
And man, can we pump that up? Can we elevate it? When people do that, can we elevate it when we do it ourselves? To be proud of our shame. Not to be shameless, not to live without shame, but rather to be proud of the shame that we do live with.
Yeah.
That moves us into relationship.
Love it. I wrote down, I have a point for next time too when you say that. That's lovely. It is so this is important. And it's not like this isn't all about tools, but sometimes the corrective experience, always the corrective experience, is not about fixing it. It's just about being with it. And as I hear you, Tony, and this is something I've learned to admire about my own self and really learned to just recently embody, is I enjoy sitting at the feet of teachers. And I see that in you as well. When you speak about your instructors and things you've read, and there's something in that that's really helpful with shame as well, being teachable and finding people who are light for your path.
Yeah, totally. There's this image that got branded on me really young. I mean that in a like metaphorical way. I had this idea, uh, this man talking to another one and making a request. The person says, who are you to make this request? And the guy replies and says, I'm a person of authority. I can tell people to go here. I can tell people to go there. But I'm also a person under authority. And they respect me because I know what it means to follow as well. And for me, it's always been a goal to sit under teachers. And I teach, I'm doing this, right? But I share what I receive, and especially when it works. And that's part of me being a dad. It's part of me being a therapist is I'm given stuff. It's not my own. I want to pass it on because that's what we all need.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Love talking to you, my dear friend.
Mhm.
Dear friend. We got
Oh,
lots of years of being dear friends, and I just it's such an honor to like let people have a little peek into how we get to talk to each other. So
so much fun.
okay, we both have to skedaddle. I know that.
Yep.
Okay, take care, everybody, and we're on track with shame. I took notes. There's things that I didn't get to talk about, and I know
Gosh.
Tony's full of it. You can take that however you want.
This is my jam.
Yes, this is your jam. You're full of jam.
Oh, PB&J.
PB&J. Perfect. Perfect combo. Okay, take care, Tony.
All right, have a good one.